Hello everyone. I hope all of you can see me now and hear me now. And welcome to the events of epam znight. As the first presenter, I'm going to give you an overview of different kind of health check patterns. We are going to compare them to each other. Going to have a little demo at the end. Um, my name is Oresztesz Margaritisz. I work as a chief software engineer at epam currently. Um, Immediately, I would like to start with a little bit of exercise with all of you. So, I assume that each and every one of you are able to actually recognize the symbols of the screen, especially those people who already have a driving license. Most of them actually, to give you a simple summary, even if you don't know the concrete um, issue of appearing in your car or happening in your car, most of them just simply means that there is some trouble inside your machine, and it's better to visit a car mechanic so they can fix the problem for you. All right, so car manufacturing already knew that their system is not perfect. It doesn't mean to be working 100% all of the time. That's why they built in this functionality to actually handle failures in a way that maintainers and users can just safely recover from these. So why my question is that why would software be different, right? Maybe some of you has the feeling that um, because my code is represented as a static text, because I can just simply figure out what's going on step by step by a debugger. It's also being executed the same way during runtime, but this is not true. Runtime is a dynamic environment, so this means that because you are introducing different kind of dependencies and interdependencies that nobody expects, it's going to behave very differently in different kind of scenarios. But first question you might have is that how serious or severe is the problem? That's what, for example, my first interest was when I was investigating this topic. So what you currently see on the screen on the right side is the so-called reliability curve. There is a theory behind the reliability curve. It's enough for you for this time to just understand that it shows you the still non-faulty, still running components of your system versus all of the components, even the failed ones over time. And what you need to remember from the story is that this is an exponential curve. So this means that at the first very short period, you will see a few or one of your components introducing some kind of failure or providing some kind of failure. And soon after, what will happen is that majority of your components will also have various kind of failures. And again, pretty soon after comes total blackout. And again, what you have to remember from all of these stories that this is an exponential curve. So things are happening very fast. So if you were thinking about a strategy like let's introduce maintenance in the next sprint, if your next sprint is happening within a month, that means that you have to actually deal with outages soon, very soon after your first release, and you cannot wait until a month until you introduce these kind of maintenance features in your code. All right. Another fact that we need to deal with is that you cannot build up 100% available system based on not 100% available components. Again, this is just the facts coming from simple statistics. What you can see on the screen is just a simple schematic of a working computer. Okay, now let's say that, in theory, let's say that each component has 99% of availability. It might be more in reality, but let's say that it's just like that. So this gives us a graph of dependent component, and the total availability just simply can be counted, and it's just going to be 96%. Now, nowadays and today's in the world of microservice, there is no such architecture as single instance architecture. That's the fact. So, so that means that usually you have something like what you have on the screen. You have a client talking to a server, talking to a database, right? So what happens when you increase the complexity just simply adding three machines that are dependent of each other? Again, let's assume that all of the availability of each individual element is just 99%. Now your availability just dropped down to 88.5% just because you introduced much more dependency in this architecture. So what this means for us again is that things go south very easily. All right. Probably that's why IT team looks like before they are going on holiday. And not just because um, the machines that they are using are not reliable, not just because the network cables have some issues needs to be replaced and so on. It's also because your code is running on these machines, and these guys know that, and they're more experienced than you. So if we are look at just a single instance of running code, we can experience different kind of issues like simple bugs. That's something that's unavoidable, unfortunately. But you have to deal with different kind of problems like configuration issues. So assuming that this is something that's not cannot be tested, and assuming that in production, when you deploy to production, that's going to be the first time when you are going to test your configuration if you change something. All right, there's no way to test this out with just unit testing or integration testing or everything else. You also need to deal with different kind of synchronization issues that might just be familiar with for you as inconsistencies, different kind of memory leaks and thread leaks, and unfortunately pool misconfigurations. So again, I assume you that most of you, because the lack of time, has not been reviewing their connection pool or dependency pool configurations. Not all of them, and not all of them are fine-tuned. Okay. And as the last typical cause of outages, there are deadlocks. Not because just because of your own code, it can be introduced in a library or dependency or anything like that, or maybe the HTTP server that you are currently using. It's it's unpredictable. These are unpredictable outages happening all the time. All of them has different kind of characteristics. All right. So how do we deal with these problems? Usually, the easiest way to introduce fault tolerance is to introduce some kind of redundancy. So this means that I am going to multiply or replicate either one or two of these components or all of the components at once. So typically, if you think about data redundancy, you just copy over the same data to different kind of locations. This is, if we are talking about just a disk, this can be a RAID configuration. When if you have some data issues in one of the disk, you can still um, go out and go for the other replicated volumes and still get the valid values. Databases do this all the time with timing redundancy by saving multiple versions or storing multiple versions of the same record at the same time. This is familiar for US transactions. And again, the other most common way is to introduce, let's call them service redundancy or process redundancy, by running the same version of the same process in multiple instances or multiple machines. All right, now all of these solutions for failures, for introducing fault tolerance, introduce some kind of controller. that you can see as an orange, big orange arrow on the left side. And for this to work properly, the controllers have to know which of your instances are still able to provide or to consume workloads, which are those which can't. That's why software engineering introduced the concept of health checks. So the purpose of health check is to tell to these kind of controllers if your machine or if your process is still able to consume workload um, or not. Simple like that. Now, why simply can't we say that, okay, health checks, not a big deal, just return something simple and job's done? Of course. So I have a story for you that simply I think shows very well how health checks implementations can turn into something very bad. So in this story that I've read about recently, the developer introduced an error in the in the application code that was responsible for providing um, backend template rendering for their website. And the defect just simply caused the application to return a blank page. Now, the problem with this solution was that, first of all, it was not detectable in the health check itself because the health check was also just returning just a simple HTTP OK response. So the blank page also worked, but the other problem was that the blank page was rendering, was giving back responses much faster than the other instances which had to do some kind of work. So let's say if the response time for the backend rendering was 50 to 60 milliseconds, the blank page rendering was just 5 to 6 milliseconds, which was 10 times faster. And the load balancing before the fleet that was responsible for this kind of rendering was set to route traffic to the instances which had the least workload, which were responding faster or the fastest. So actually this new release just turned into a black hole and just sucked in all the client requests, and it was providing a real outage at the end. So I think because of these stories and because I hear these stories all the time, um, I think it's important to talk about the health check, the various implementations, and to know which one to use in which case, even though it looks like a simple topic. So let's look at the anatomy of a health check a little bit before we talk about the patterns. So as I said, health checks are usually used with some kind of controller in place. This controller just simply has to check if your application is working properly or not before assigning workloads, and based on your response, it can provide some kind of actions. Okay, when it's asking if your application is healthy or not, your application just simply tell the truth or an assumption, or just simply can lie, like what happened in the previous story. Okay, so that's the two cases that we need to investigate. Are we able to avoid different kind of issues that we are talking about or not for a specific health check implementation? If we talk about the various kind of actions, we can say that you can take an action like doing the restart, for instance. You can apply some kind of traffic shaping on the cluster itself. You can configure some kind of alerting, but when you think that you cannot recover from the problem by yourself, by the controller itself, and some human needs to be involved, you can do some scaling also, um, and you can control the deployments. So that's the various aspects that we need to consider when we will talk about the implementation themselves. Okay, now just giving you a summary of what kind of patterns are we going to talk about. We have to, of course, consider the case when we don't have any HashCheck implementation. So I won't judge anybody who listens to this talk. There are some situations, let's say when you are maintaining a legacy application, when you can just simply don't have any options. So it's okay to discuss this scenario as well. Of course, we have another kind of health check called shallow health check, when you just simply return a blank page, or something, try to do something simple. Um, I think there are different kind of patterns called deep health check, when you try to investigate not just the instance itself, you try to go deeper and also give some kind of summary of the services dependencies. And we have something called the passive health check, which I've seen recently, which I think the most advanced way of providing health checks. We talk about why in the talk in various sections. Right now, there are many other fault tolerance patterns available for us. I think the most common that you know is circuit breaker, for instance. But what is the connection between hash check implementation, and all these kind of other fault tolerant patterns? So let's also clarify this as well. Um, what's the situation with retries? Do I need to consider retries when I'm implementing a health check response or not? I say that you should not bother with that at all, because the next retry should happen at the next period, when the application itself or the control itself again tries to ask the health check of your application. Retries just overcomplicate your implementation, so don't include the retries when you are providing this information. Now, timeouts is something that I think is mandatory. Okay, so if your health check period is configured to 10 seconds, why go out with something that has the timeout of 30 seconds? Right, it's just going to mess up your data, your responsiveness. So dial down the timeouts for all the connection pools you are trying to report in your health checks. In this case, what I make sense is at most 5 seconds of timeout for um, for the health check period, or 10 seconds. It's um, it's fair enough, I think. In this case, you don't need to have any longer timeouts. It's not going to provide you any better guarantees. Okay, but what was the situation with other kind of fault tolerant patterns that are a bit more complex, like circuit breakers, providing defaults, providing fallback mechanisms? What's the relation with your health check implementation, and these, how I can fine tune my health check response with my circuit breaker configurations, which can be very complex. So that's problematic in some of the pattern implementations. Some of the patterns will provide you some very good relation with the other patterns. But this is something that we need to consider when implementing the health checks, and especially if you are using other fault tolerant patterns. Okay, so let's give you uh, a summary of the patterns themselves, including some kind of comparison, some kind of guarantees of what kind of failures are avoidable with each of them. So what happens if you don't have any health check implementation? Luckily, if you have a cluster orchestrator in place, you can still have some guarantees, for instance. So if you are working with something that's monitoring your containers for instance, in Kubernetes, you can provide the number of desired instances running, or the number of replicas running. And if your container exits, and if it exits with a provide in a provide in a proper way, then if the orchestrator detects that, it's going to restart them. All right. There can be only an issue if your container is just keeps up and running, even though your main process just exited, or even if your HTTP application or web application exited. So if you are working with something legacy, trying to migrate into containers, at least make this test by yourself. exit the application, check if the container exits itself. Okay, for alerting, if you are working with a load balancer that's representing metrics for the different kind of response codes, like the load balancers or reverse proxies I worked with, and with the proxies I used in the sandbox, then you can provide a failure rate based on the HTTP responses. Of course, this is just available when you are handling a layer 7 load balancer, which is interpreting the HTTP request response itself also. So you can see that in Prometheus, both of the metrics are very similar. I tried to use for a failure rate the proportion of the successful response codes or the faulty response codes versus all the others. And this is the diagram that I will get at the end. Now, one thing that I want to mention when working with rates is that pay attention to the interval, because if you have just this kind of small spiky outages that's going to disappear from time to time, it won't be visible if you use a shorter or a longer period. So what you can see on the left is the same diagram from the same time period with an interval of 5 minutes. What you can see on the right is the same time period again with the interval of 1 minute. So in this situation, what happened is that the database just dropped out, and this because of this, also the services response rate was also increased. And because of the differences of this faster response rate or faster responses provided versus the slower response rate, um, this this kind of failure rate was not showing up these spikes if you have longer intervals. Okay, now I say that the risk that you are taking is that you cannot simply apply traffic shaping or deployment if you don't have health checks. I haven't found any kind of solution to that. Another thing that needs to be considered is that you are just going to if you have the metrics in place, at least with alerting, you are just going to catch the possible memory and thread leaks, but not the other kind of issues. Okay, so it's very, very, very limited. Now, what should we do with shallow health checks? What you can see on the screen is not just a simple HTTP 200 response. I try to include also the disk space here. So if you are doing some kind of I operation like logging, you should consider including them also in your health check, because at least you need to predict that okay, you are able to write um, some amount of data in the future. Of course, this is not perfect because many of the implementations, like the implementation that I did, and for example, the default implementation in Spring Boot, is not really writing to disk. So it's not going to avoid different kind of situations that can lead to, again, different kind of failures, like when simply just write failed. So having free disk space doesn't mean that your write is not going to fail, or when, for example, you are out of inodes and cannot create any more files, and these kind of scenarios. So it's important to mention that this is not perfect for if the IO is important for you at the same instance. But at least it's more. It tries to dig deeper and provide some more information. So, what options do we have with restarts? Now, with restarts, I can have in Kubernetes a liveness probe, and if this liveness probe just reports an issue, my container is going to be restarted. So if let's say I'm out of the disk, I have the chance to restart my container in another node that might have more disk space mounted underneath, and my overall this won't affect actually my cluster's healthiness or availability. That's the good news. Okay, Of course, again, we can do some traffic shaping. So the load balancer just simply is going to ask this kind of shallow health check, and this shows the healthiness of the HTTP pool itself. It's going to provide some information if the pool doesn't have any kind of deadlocks, or it's not depleted, or if not all the threads are blocked in the pool. But what happens in case my database is going to be down? Now the hash check is just lying, because if I get some workload routed by the load balancer, I cannot do the real work here. So we have to consider these kind of scenarios, and of course we can have various number of connection pool issues that we need to talk about. Again, wrong timeout settings, having lots of invalid connections in the pool which cannot be checked out, or which needs to be again collected and reinitiated. Um, you need to deal with block threads if you have, let's say, a wrong pool implementation. It's not unavoidable, and it happened with me like, or at least 2 or 3 times. So it's not impossible to see these issues in production. Um, if you have an unbounded pool, again, having thousands of connections, it's not funny, especially if you have several instances, it's going to kill your CPU. And you have to deal with the scenario called overflooding, when all the instances start up from nothing and start caching and start requesting lots of things at once from the database in a big batch, and various thread and memory leaks. Okay, so not including the connection pool in this kind of health checks is again something that's not really wise. So we have to take this in our mind when choosing an implementation. Now with alerting, good news is that at least Envoy, which is again a pretty popular load balancer or reverse proxy, provides metrics for cluster health checks. So I was able to provide a diagram by the Prometheus query below. Um, it's also monitoring my instances actively when they don't receive any kind of traffic. So when traffic arrives, let's say have a warm-up period or something like that, the instances will be always checked if they can uh, provide some workload or not. So it's not traffic dependent. That's the positive thing from shallow hash checks. Unfortunately, because shallow hash check talks about the instances, usually it's not applicable for controlling deployments, because it's not providing any kind of check of the tests of the configurations that we have. Especially think about the scenario when the database goes down, database configuration is incorrect, then I cannot act on the deployment itself when it's ongoing. Okay, so as a summary, I think we are at least be able to capture the memory and thread leak, the thread leak, especially if it's happening in the HTTP pool, but of course not the other issues. Now with deep hash check, we are trying to go a bit deeper, as I said already, and try to report also some kind of information from the dependencies, like the database. So the default implementation most commonly is doing some kind of connection pool validation, running a simple query, and giving back simple responses. Okay, everything's of course everything looks good, so this is the default that we should use. Well, it's not true again. That's the problem. So I will tell you why. Um, the restarts and deployments now can be separated. So in Kubernetes, again, liveness probe just provides the checks if the container is live or not and restarts the containers if there's a problem. So that's not really makes sense to include any kind of dependency there, because if the database is not available, a container restart just simply won't help. So that's why it's good to separate liveness and readiness probe in different endpoints and to include the deep hash checks only in the readiness probe. And there is another kind of feature that I advise to use. This is the startup probe. Startup probe just going to block your deployments or the container startup until it's not until the response below does not provide an HTTP OK. So it makes sense to include everything in the startup probe, because let's say if the database is not ready, then it does not make sense to just go out and roll out my deployment. What we should do is just to investigate and maybe roll back, take a step back and figure out why what we are trying to do is not working. All right. Now, problem is deep hash check is that, again, we need a different kind of pattern or fault tolerant pattern in the load balancer itself. Because what happens if the database goes down? How should the load balancer just act on that? So should I just deny traffic of one of the instance because it's reported as failed at the other instance as well? Then I'm not going to be able to provide any traffic. So many of the load balancers have this pattern implemented called fail open. This means that if every instance is reported to be unhealthy, at least keep some traffic on the instances, because probably there's some kind of configuration issue or defect in the hash check implementation. We should not just go down with all of the cluster at once, because load balancer is not able to figure out what's the wise decision in this case. So that's why they have this fail open mechanism implemented. Okay, I said that it's important to consider different kind of hash check implementations if I have other fault tolerant patterns. So let's say again, database is down. If I'm doing traffic shaping and have some kind of fallback and defaults, does this mean that this instance is healthy? Does this mean that his instance is not healthy? So one of the solutions for this problem is using probing. That means that I should just simply ask or submit a synthetic request that goes through the same path as a normal transaction. And if it reports something that was a successful response, I can probably say that a real request will be okay. The drawback of this mechanism is that if I have a big cluster of many hash checks ongoing, that's going to skew my existing statistics or metrics, because I'm going to be full of these synthetic requests. So again, this is not perfect. At least it's able to get, because I'm going through the same request path as a normal transaction, is going to be able to capture at least the defects themselves as well as the deadlocks, and it's going to also honor my fallback default settings as well as the circuit breaker settings. So far so good. So something that's more advanced for the cost of having synthetic statistics and metrics, logs, and tracing. So I think this is an easy implementation to do until you don't mess up. Simple thing or a simple way to mess up this implementation if I don't go through all the layers of my application. So let's see if I'm having a separate health check that's happening at the HTTP layer, I should forward it to my original controller. Even better, go through with an HTTP forward to the original controller, and just don't try to mess up in a lower layer. Because if my circuit breaker implementation is usually at the controller part of the MVC, I'm not going to be able to be in sync with circuit breaker setup. Okay, so now with deep hash checks, with probing, especially with probing, I say that we are going to be able to capture most of these issues. Okay, now with passive hash checks, what I'm trying to do, and this is, I think, the most advanced but the most complicated kind of hash check implementation, is that I'm just going to report some kind of statistics of the existing requests and responses. So if I have a metric library in my application that's already providing metrics, it's easier to use their data to tell something about the healthiness of the service itself. And unfortunately, I haven't seen any default implementations. I have my own implementation, but of course, without any kind of guarantee that it's going to work just fine for you. Um, some of the load balancers have this set up already, for example, Envoy. Some of them, unfortunately, not. So what's important in this implementation is that you should not eject one of your instance for forever in the future. So there should be some safety mechanism that's immediately reporting the instance as healthy if some time passed. Another important thing is that I'm providing again a failure ratio, but this failure ratio should just ignore older values. So it should be valid for a certain specific period, like 5 minutes, because just for a failure in the past, I just don't want to eject one of the instances for forever in the future. As I said in Envoy, there is this thing called outlier detection. This is the simplest setup possible. In this example, it says that for every consecutive 500 HTTP responses of 3 responses, I'm going to just give a break to that instance. Again, there is a base ejection time that tells it what's the maximum duration for removing the instance itself. There is a max ejection percent that tells that only 50% of the instances should be just removed. So if there's kind of configuration issue or something similar, it doesn't make sense again to remove all of the instances at once. That's why there is a safety mechanism also built in here. Okay, good thing is that Envoy provides pretty good statistics about the outlier detection. You can see that now there's a plateau at 50%, again, because it doesn't make sense to eject all the instances, because that was my setting. And this is how a similar graph can be provided by Prometheus, and what you can use, for instance, for configuring your own alerts based on the outlier detection by Envoy. So I say with passive health check, um, because it works by real transactions, you are going to again able to capture all of the issues at once. That's the good news. And you don't have to bother with synchronizing with other patterns like circuit breakers or defaults, fallbacks, or local caching when it's still providing some values. Your configurations will be as simple as I say practically possible. And now it's time for some demo, because I think it makes sense to also show the practical side of all these theories. In the demo application, this is what I was setting up. So if you go at my code base in GitHub, the whole thing is being able to fire it up with the simple make command in Docker Compose. Um, you're going to have two load balancers. You can compare them to each other. I'm going to show you different kind of metrics from Envoy and traffic. I used Quarkus for the service implementation. For the health check implementation, I used microprofile health um, specification based implementation, and I'm using MongoDB. So let's have a little bit of discussion of how this looks for real. First of all, let's see how the health check looks by default. What I think is a wise thing to do is to introduce feature flag for each and every kind of health check. So when you have any issues, you can just enable them, and then restart or redeploy your application. Of course, as I said, there is an aggregated health check by default that's showing up all of them. This used for backward compatibility, but I think it's also useful for other situations as well. And there is um, a shallow health check available as the liveness probe, which just shows the disk healthiness. and there is a readiness probe available which tries to show up more by the database connection. So now I disable the probing and metering health check, and let's see what happens if the database is not running. Now everything is up and healthy. I'm going to give break for the database instance. All right, let's check here the health check again. Unfortunately, it required me a lot of time to provide information because I'm using a real request to check if the database is healthy or unhealthy. It's going to be the same with probing health check. So let's just turn back the database. You can see that with the probing health check, it's trying to do a real transaction. I'm trying to return real data as the response. Um, with the cost of again some synthetic request. So I have a simple implementation that tries to increment a counter here, and I'm incrementing the counter also with the hash check itself. So if I go and try to retrieve the data for real from another endpoint, the counter is also here increased. So that's the cost of having probing hash check. It provides more realistic data, but unfortunately of the cost of having also submitting real requests that has to be filtered out. Again, if I just stop the database itself, it's going to have the problem of the timeout. It's going to be more slow than it should be. Now with the passive health check, the good thing is that this this cost does not necessarily needs to be paid. So again, let's go back to the deep health check here, because that's where I included, I think, the passive health check. But let's see. Here's the metering health check. It's now enabled. That's a good thing. Maybe I have not turned off the probing health check. That's right. That's why it's still slow. All right. Now my application is up and running. I have these metering health check turned on, which is also showing that, okay, there's no issue here. As soon as I'm trying to, let's say, again, retrieve some data from the application itself, but fail, because I provide real metrics in the application, it immediately reports that, let me zoom this in, it immediately reports that now the application is not able to provide any information, but it does not require to wait for the timeout because it's based on existing statistics. I will show it again after some requests. All right, again, you don't have to pay for the timeout. You can see here a failure ratio. If you are interested, I won't go into details. You can find this implementation that I did in my GitHub repository, which includes the sandbox. And again, an important feature is that after a certain period of time, which is 20 seconds in our case, it will again report itself as up and running, even though the failure ratio is higher, because it does not make sense to remove an instance forever. So when I'm going to go back and enable the database itself, everything gets back to normal. Again, you can see that the ratio will drop. The metering health check should just simply after 20%, it's still 31. Okay, let me just provide some more. After 20%, it should still report the application is up and healthy. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the metrics themselves, the alerts themselves, and how it should look in a real dashboard. So um, if you want to experiment around the sandbox, you are going to be able to have different kind of experiment based on your current setup. Um, in the chaos testing folder, there are some shell scripts which will just for a period going to kill and then start a specific random container. It will do the same with pods as well. If you are running Kubernetes or Minikube, you can run an end-to-end test. So that's what I did as an experiment in the certain time period that you can see on the screen. And I have variable interval here. So let's talk about the failure rate itself. So this failure rate shows um, some suspicious spiky outages. But as soon as let's change the interval to 5 minutes, it's going to disappear. So here in the alerts are not configurable, unfortunately. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to edit them and set the same period. You can see that everything's flattened. But the truth is that there were some spiky outages happening. And you can see that because it was um, related to a dependency, the database, this also caused a response time increase and some rate drops. So the rate immediately dropped to the timeout, which was 5 seconds. So I was able to just provide one response per 5 seconds. But because we were able to provide more data, more successful requests in the previous period before these outages, that's why it's not shown here. So again, this can be an advantage or a disadvantage. If you don't want to share or show um, some kind of short outages, you can just hide them by choosing a longer interval. All right. In this cluster healthiness, you can see that the good thing is that it's working even though I haven't had traffic for all the time. These periods which have 0 healthy instances were the same when the database was not running. These were the most dangerous ones. This is the same period. If I go back and show the 1 minute interval, was the same period when we had the same spikes. You can also investigate the outlier, the statistics of the outlier detection for Envoy, and this is the query for doing that. You can see again here that the maximum is 50% all of the time. Most of the time we've detected some kind of issue, so most of the time one of the instances were out. This was because of the um, um, high period of removing and then putting back the instances. Okay, I don't have so much time left, but I might be able to show you one example, last example related to deployments, because that was also what I've promised to do. So let's say that I have the deep health check enabled, which will also verify if my connection is working properly. Let's say that I messed up the database configuration. Okay, and I'm trying to go out into production, roll out this change to production. Now what you can see here that I have a Kubernetes cluster up and running. Application is up and healthy. Also, it's available here in the application itself, or let's show up some real transactions. I'm able to get some real transactions, but I have an issue in the configuration. So when I try to, let's increase the version for the um, instance that I'm going to deploy. Let's release 1.1. This should stop the deployment, and I should be able to just go back and roll back my implementation. Okay, and that's, I think, the last example. So when this is finished, I'm up to some Q&A for the rest of the time. I hope the deployment will end up relatively soon. If not, I will just abort and leave it for you for experimenting. So because, just a little explanation what's happening here. So because I have the startup probe that just have the aggregated health check of everything that's implemented here. Because in the new version I have the MongoDB health check enabled, but the wrong configuration, it should just show up my instance as being unhealthy. And startup probe should just not go ahead and roll out the deployment until the application is not reporting itself as healthy. This helps me avoid configuration issues. Good thing is that I'm still able to get some information from the old instances or from the old versions. Okay, so this won't affect my availability at all. But we block the deployments. So what I'm simply just going to do, I have to take a little bit of hint here. I'm just going to undo my rollout. Okay, with this simple comment here. Yeah, and after short period, everything should be back to normal without any kind of outages of the service. I'm still able to get responses. But now I still have the old version. The number of posts just increased for a while, but it's going to be lowered and then just going to be back to normal. I have still the two instances. Okay. So I think that was it. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. And I'm looking at the YouTube chat, hoping that you have some interesting questions here. I need to wait until the stream buffering gets to that point at the end of my presentation. So I will wait. If you have any questions afterwards, just don't hesitate to contact me. Okay, by the given information in the last slide. Just send me a direct message or find me on LinkedIn and just start the chat if you have any questions. All right. I don't think that we have any questions today. So thanks so much for being here and for listening. There's going to be, oh, sorry. There was just a question appeared. Which hash check pattern would you use if you can only use one hash check? That's a tough question, Peter. Um, I would say that based on my experience, the metering health check or the passive health check provides the most information from the running service, but it's also the most difficult to get it right. So what would I suggest to you is to go with something simple. Let's say um, go for the default deep health check if that's possible. That also includes the database pool configuration, and try to improve based on that. So probably the next step or the next level would be doing synthetic health checks or probing if you are onto other fault tolerant patterns. If your application won't evolve so much and won't have other fault tolerant patterns introduced, then you probably have to stop at deep health check. It does not matter how many health check implementations you have. You can have multiple ones, as I have in my sandbox. It's important to have also a feature flag. It's very easy to add, and you can just turn off your feature flag whenever you want. For example, if you are using Spring Boot, you have everything as default. So you have the connection pool by default, or that you can use the disk healthiness, the HTTP pool, and you can just turn them on, turn them off based on your needs. If you have AWS managed database, you can set up alerting, let's say at database level. You might not necessarily need deep health check, and you might just decide to go out and use the HTTP pool healthiness. In brief, I think that's it. But if you have additional questions, just find me and let's have a conversation. Okay, so thank you very much again. Thank you for being here. I think the time's up, unfortunately. So please stay at this channel because there will be many other interesting presentations, not just me. And again, thanks for watching. Have a nice day, everyone. Have a nice evening. Bye bye.
Hello, we will start soon. We will wait 2 more minutes to start the streaming, and hopefully everyone can join who are interested in. In the meantime, I will share the presentation slides and GitHub code just in case you want to follow me while I am speaking. It's in the YouTube comments. We will start soon. Welcome, everyone. All right, I think it's time to start. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night to everyone. I hope you will find this inspiring or at least interesting. I will talk about Scala.js, its current state, how it can be used for a simple application, what it's capable of. And there are multiple frameworks for front-end development like Vue, React, or Angular, or nowadays Svelte. But this time I wanted to try something more interesting for me. It's a stream-based approach. It's using Airstream with Laminar, and it's pure Scala. We can use it from Scala and don't need to use for that any third-party libraries. But it's also possible to use JavaScript libraries with Scala.js. So I will show you a few things with that. Okay. So what about this demo project? In the oasis.org, there is an encyclopedia of integer sequences. And my goal with this small tool was to visualize and analyze the integer sequences. For this, I used Scala.js and used fastparse to create a parser for that. I used chart.js to visualize the sequences and used scalability typed converter to generate the Scala.js types for the chart.js.org. And I used Airstream and Laminar for event streaming, and that made it quite nice. To be honest, I expected more problems, but it was not bad. So, as I mentioned in my short introduction, I'm not familiar with front-end development, and sometimes in my backend jobs, I also find confusing or challenging to combine event streams and signals. But it turned out that Laminar made some good choices, so it's not impossible to create a nice-looking code, or at least not ugly and not working in some ways. I have to admit I am not familiar with SBT or Scala.js bundler and things like that. So This was also a bit challenging. By default, modularization is enabled in Scala.js 1.0, and I'm always seeing an error in the console log. I don't know how to fix it. Probably I should check further. I was trying to add the documentation to the Oasis page of each sequence, but it seems that they don't allow the cross-origin request sharing. So I just created a link where you can go there. And I have some flaky tests. Usually in the Scala.js tests, these tests are generated. That's why they are flaky. Probably some edge cases are not working as expected, so that's somewhat expected. Okay, how does this Scala.js thing work? It absolutely looks like Scala. I will show you some code examples. And it also compiles as a Scala code. It generates classifies, but also an intermediate representation, which later used to generate ECMAScript 2015. 15 code, and you can specify different optimizations. One for development, that's called fast opt, and the other one is for production, that's called full opt. There is a tool called Scala.js bundler, which allows grabbing the the JavaScript dependencies from the npm package manager website, and you can depend on those locally. It will generate a bundler JS file based on those, and optimized JS file based on the regular Scala file. And we have the nice feature of Scala.js that we can use regular Scala code where we have no Java dependencies, and a lot of the libraries already cross-compile to Scala.js 2, some of them even to Scala native. I've selected Chart.js because it looked good enough on the website, and it's not too complicated to use. Scala.type was able to generate typings for that. I have to admit I tried others like Vega or Plotly. Both was suitable for Scala.type. Oh, what is Scala.type? That's a tool which can generate Scala.js bindings based on the definitely typed or some other TypeScript typings available through npm. So in that way, you can use these JavaScript libraries as if they were Scala.js libraries. And why did I choose fast parts and not, for example, parboiled or Scala parser combinators? I find it easy to use, well documented, and the support on the Gitter channel was also good, so it was quite a natural choice for me. And why Laminar? I was completely unfamiliar with Laminar and Airstream, so I just copied the why Laminar page main points, like no magic involved, no complicated virtual DOM diffing like within React. It's a native Scala.js lib with no third-party or JavaScript dependencies, and everything is individual abstract keys, key value pairs. The whole elements is easily composable and abstractable. Glitch-free reactive system, consistent observations at no runtime cost, so it's quite nice. And here it is how my code looks like. But first, let's check in real time. So this is how we can start the compilation. We select the the project, the faststop.js and Webpack. I also added the test part, so make sure that we are testing before checking things. As you can see, compiling is quite fast with faststop.js. It took 10 seconds to generate the files. Maybe I should change something to give a more realistic run. Nope, not realistic. Oh yeah, it's flaky. Let's try this. This should make it recompile. But it's probably too small. Oh, the structure of the code. I have a JavaScript related UI. This is the JavaScript loader. As you can see, it has the faststop bundle and the faststop.js. And I have the parser, and oh, the parser is also important. It's not complicated, and it's only a bit more than 100 lines. I have an evaluator for that. And practically that's it. The UI is also not very complicated. The whole UI is 200 lines around. And if I open it in my browser, I can show you how it looks like. So we have this formula where we can say something like 2000 divided by, no, let it be modulo n. In this case, we will see the values modulo n from 1 to 44, like this. And practically here we can define series and visualize those with as much detail as you want. Nice that it's compiling. And I move it a bit back. So I have added a few examples. This is a recursive definition of Fibonacci numbers. You might be afraid of using this large value for a recursive implementation, but you don't have to because I already implemented a memoization. So previous values get memoized and used. So it's not very slow, not very slow. And this is another just thing graph which reminds me a smile. So it's easy to cheer me up or cheer the audience up. I have implemented a few Oasis functions also. This might be the 1, 2, 3, 5. Oh, this might be the Fibonacci. Let's check it. Oh, yeah. I made a mistake somewhere. Okay, that's expected. So we cannot move the right before the left, and we cannot move the left after the right. So they are connected somehow, and these are connected through streams. So I think the compilation has finished now. Let's check the SBT shell. Yeah. Here you can see how long the compilation took. It was 42 seconds. And you can find the size of the emitted file. Oops. Of the JavaScript files also. Just to give you an idea how large is it. It's currently more than 3 megabytes for the dependencies, the JavaScript dependencies, and almost 2.5 megabytes for the generated. Oh, that's the bundle. Okay, we should have somewhere the. Oh, sorry, it's not so important. You can check it yourself. Testing is quite fast. You can check individually the JVM-based parts and also the JavaScript parts. And you can run the test for the cross-compiled parts also. I am running out of time, so let's go back to the slides. So we have this short introduction how things work. So for example, if we type something to the formula events, we parse it, and if it has an error, you might have seen the error messages. Otherwise, we use the start signal and end signal. So we compute the necessary new values also. And then based on those, we compute the values. The start and end have effect on the labels, which also affects the values. And these clicks will affect the formula box. So that's how it works. And go back to the code. Yeah. So just an example how this works. For example, if we go to the labels, so chart.labels it can be used as an optional array, and we have the label keys, which is just a sequence, and in the end we just update. But how we use this show foundf? So we have the formula part formula stream, starting with empty string, just to make it a signal. We combine those with the start and end signal. So when we change the start position and end position, we both give back the signal. And we are only interested in the function name. And in that case, we show the function with start end, or we use the parsed expression and just show that. And I think that's it. Soon I should finish, but I still have some time. So let's check the parser. So as you can see, it's a bit cryptic, I have to admit, but you can use this method to combine two parsers one after the other, and this is the optional part. Yeah, and just like this. Oh yeah, the pipe is the or. You can say that something is this one or the other one. What else I should say? Oh yeah, thank you. Not thank you. I was a bit surprised that I had not much problems when I was checking this. And I've also observed upgrade in the dependencies. For example, Scala.js 1.1.0 has already been released, and the branch I have shared, it's already on that. And it was not bad. I like programming this way, and I cannot say that I would use in a larger project, but maybe. So it's not bad, and it can be a good option to try out. So if you have any questions, I am around, and you can find me on LinkedIn. But please bear in mind that I'm not an expert with front-end development, so I can be very dumb. Thank you very much. Have a nice day, and please welcome Krisztina within 10 minutes. So, bye-bye.
Hello all. Good evening for everybody. I hope everybody's fine on this beautiful day and my colleagues and all the presenters could entertain you with new information, new knowledge they could share. Okay. Let me just give the chance for those ones who are just about to arrive in the streaming to get connected. And in a minute, I'm going to start my presentation. Maybe for those ones who know Mentimeter, it is a telling line here above. You can already go to Mentimeter just to save some time for yourselves. Okay. Now let's get started then. Here we are. Some of you have already signed in. Let us check who will be able to find our platform for interaction today, which is going to be menti.com. Please open a new window and go to menti.com and use the code 807184, which you will be able to see throughout the whole presentation, even if you are not able to see it on the first slide anymore. And then please follow my instructions. The first one is going to be to send me a thumb up if you are there already, just to make you see how many of you are there. At least one person. Okay, good. Good. There is a little delay. That's why I'm waiting a little bit longer. But I promise I will be able to entertain you for half a minute or 1 minute until the others find the buttons. Today we are going to have in the following 1 hour something kind of common thinking, reflections, communication in a way, even though I'm not there, not present in your homes, so we'll be far away from each other, but still sitting here in the hope, having some very enthusiastic people who would like to try out something today. So let me get started then, as I see that more and more of you have already arrived. So my first question is, before we start doing anything, is whether you like meetings. And I'm really curious because maybe this technique I'm going to show you will be able to help you out in meeting situations. And some of you might think, I'm okay with having meetings. Some of you might be excited about them. Some of you might be absolutely enthusiastic, but some of you maybe don't really like and think this is just a waste of time. It depends on what kinds of meetings you are used to. Maybe there are some participants here who are okay with having meetings. Good to know. I think it's a good thing to be okay with having meetings because we cannot avoid them, to be honest. And if we cannot avoid them, it is there in our everyday lives, then of course we need to accept them to a certain extent. And if you want to get motivated for meetings, then if you start liking them, it's even better. Wow, wow, wow. And there is one person who likes them because they are useful. Good. Okay. And I'm sitting here still in the hope that somebody is an enthusiast of meetings. And they might be then, yeah, one of the lucky ones who have very efficient, very good, very well prepared, and very well managed meetings where the facilitator is okay as well, where everybody feels they will be able to come there and experience something very useful, positive, something with an outcome, with action items. Okay, so as far as I can see, you are more positive than negative about meetings. Okay, let's think about why you feel so. Maybe you have your reasons. Maybe your meetings are absolutely okay and you can do there what you plan to. You have there very good people who can think together with you, who you are on the same page with. And this way, you can come up with solutions which are useful enough to bring you further on the way of working together. To be honest, I have been to meetings very often where I felt, wow, this was like amazing. Everybody was well prepared. Yeah, and it can be fun. Yeah, meeting people. Meeting people who you don't necessarily need to talk to on a daily basis, or maybe you don't have enough time to exchange ideas with each other or socialize with each other. It's good to sit with them in a room and see them in person, face to face, and see what their reactions are to your proposals, your suggestions, your ideas, and of course, to see whether professionally you are on the same page and whether you are able to motivate each other, for example, to get on with working together, keep working together on the same project for a very long time. Really curious about what those three other people think who were just a few seconds ago in the chat. Because it's always more important for me to get to know what you think about this. I have my own experience, but we are here today to exchange ideas. Okay, it is useful. Great. A face-to-face conversation. You can react quickly. We can discuss things together. Yeah, this is maybe one huge advantage of meetings which are held face-to-face, that you can react very quickly, immediately, and discuss things together, thinking together. Different personalities, different levels, different roles come together, have different perspectives, and have a wide range of ideas, which might be very useful for improving what's going on the project, for improving processes, for bringing the whole project more and more into the direction which it was meant to be. Okay. Now, let's take a look at some things. I would like to bring here some ideas, despite the fact that there don't seem to be very many people in the streaming. Let's take a look at a other aspects of this as well. Let me just go on. Okay. Let's try something different for discussing things. Maybe in your meetings you have a certain procedure which you have. This certain procedure might be helpful, but if you get stuck always in the same ways of working together, same processes, then maybe new ideas cannot be brought up. And this is a pity because sometimes when there is a very complex and difficult situation, maybe you cannot come up with the right idea to get out of the situation. So what I would like to present here today is the 6 thinking hats. It was described by Edward de Bono, and it is about exploring parallel thinking about the same things just by putting on different thinking hats. These are 6 means, 6 ways to plan thinking processes. Because Edward de Bono discovered that the human brain thinks in distinct ways. And these can be challenged deliberately. And they can be used to think in a structured way about very complex problems sometimes. And this for the reason to make well-explored decisions from 6 different perspectives, which is based on the human brain's discovery. So one more thing I wanted to add here is caution. These are no natural ways of thinking. These are very artificial ones. So you need to be careful with them, and they must be used for a limited time only, just to explore what comes out of that certain perspective, and they may not be used in longer term for discussing things. You will see what these are like. These are 6 hats, 6 ways of thinking. What do you think these 6 ways of thinking are? What are you expecting? Now you are able to put in Mentimeter 6 different perspectives. I'm really curious which of these you will have there. I leave it with you. So what I meant is maybe letting you think about this, because you might think these are so obvious that it's not even necessary to discover them, so to say. And you might be wondering when I'm talking about this that you experience these directions on a daily basis. But of course, it is because these are based on the human brain's directions, ways of thinking, and that's why they sound, so to say, somehow obvious for you, which is a way you might think is nothing special. Now we've got already one person's list: acceptor, good listener, decliner, thinker, arguer. Wow, a very good approach. Okay. Maybe an arguer could be someone who wears a certain hat. You will see which one. And a thinker as well. Thinkers who try to consider every single aspect, all the facts, all the different data they are available. Oh, realistic has been mentioned here as well. Emotional. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe you have experienced in different meetings as well that some people react based on their emotions. And this is a way of thinking. This is a mean as well. One of the six thinking hats will be related to that as well. And the creative one has been mentioned by more of you. It will be related to one of the hats. A good listener. I was just wondering which one it could be. But the critical and doubtful for sure is one of the thinking hats. And a decliner. A pragmatic, somebody who is down to earth, who is very practical in thinking about things. Close, close, close. Okay. There are feelings mentioned. Analysis. Again, very good. Benefits. Benefits people can have based on what they propose as ideas. Okay. Objective hasn't been mentioned by me yet. Data. Costs. Data and costs maybe are, again, one thing that are related to the facts themselves. Okay. I think you are already well prepared for getting to know what a human brain can offer for you. Let's look at this. So this is what we are going to talk about. Yeah, actually, I wanted to joke a little bit here around because I think it's going to be less difficult than it seems to be. But what you mentioned, emotions and creativity and costs, okay, benefits as well. Thinking is already in, okay, and that controlling part and the arguing part, the declining part, the negative part is also there. Let's take a look at the 6 different heads one by one. As you can see, it's quite a colorful way of thinking, and it might represent all the different approaches we have when thinking about things and weighing up pros and cons, thinking about solutions. So the blue one, control and organization, process related. If you put on your blue hat, yeah, if you put on your blue hat, then you take control and you think in processes and you manage thinking. You plan the agenda, set the focus, you summarize and conclude. You are taking care of time management and you call for decision to be made. And you are the one who decides next steps. So this is all about processes, control and organization. Whose role do you think it is in a meeting? So who is the person who puts on the blue hat whenever being in a meeting? I'm really curious whether you can identify the person sitting in your meetings having the blue hat on. Maybe, and this is a very important thing here to be mentioned, there is nobody in your team who puts on ever the blue hat. These teams are less effective, of course, because without control, and it is really a must in every single organization, in every single team or grouping of people. So here, everything is out of control. So if there are no organizing principles, somebody who takes the leading role, maybe a manager, a project manager, a leader, a boss. Okay, this could be a thinking hat in a meeting as well, or in any kind of thinking process or process of working together. A chairperson maybe in a meeting. Okay, absolutely okay. Let me see whether there are any other votes here. Okay, so this is absolutely needed, this approach to any kind of thing. Otherwise, your team won't ever be able to succeed. But of course, there are other different approaches as well, which we are going to get to know very soon. For example, the white hat. The white hat, which you may remember, paper, which has actually no color. So here, okay, it is white, but actually it is not colorful. And this being not colorful suggests that the approach which they represent when, or anybody, putting on the white hat, just a sec. Oh, I don't have my white hat, sorry. So if you put on your white hat, then you are neutral and objective. No colors, no emotions, just the facts. General information, facts and figures, determining accuracy and relevance. Neutral and objective. This is what you need to be like. You never express your personal opinion, just the general information matters and other points of view. And somebody likes it among the audience, okay, maybe they have a feeling of confidence or feeling of safety when being in an environment like this. It is absolutely okay. It is absolutely okay. But what we've had so far, the blue hat with the control and the framework and leading, then the neutral and objective point of view is still not enough to bring a project further or communication process or any discussion, but we need something else. We need feelings, and this is what the red hat represents. Feelings, emotions. Oh, sorry, I don't know where I need to put it. So actually this way, your intuition can be switched on, your emotions. And if you put on your red hat in a meeting, for example, it means at the same time you give permission to express feelings. Of course, not for too long, otherwise it's going to be kind of ventilating. Somebody doesn't really seem to like it. Yeah, maybe they are not an emotional type, but there is still some space for this, because if you think of a meeting where there are no emotions, maybe there are other things missing as well. Intuition, which can bring things just on the right track, or hopes and fears can be expressed and can be felt at the same time. If you have too much of fears, it will maybe bring in too much of emotions when you want to make a decision. And this way, if you never allow people expressing their feelings and hopes and fears and concerns, then you might not be able to see where the dangerous things are, whether people are okay with the project, with how things are going on. Of course, likes and dislikes, what you are doing now, are absolutely okay as well. Nobody can be blamed for expressing their thoughts if the red hat is on, if they are invited to express their feelings. That's one thing. And actually, you may have emotions. You may dislike a decision. It's not a problem. And there is no need to justify why you don't like the red hat. Please limit it to maximum 30 seconds. Yeah, this is like mini ventilation. Okay, so we will do it the same way when we're going to try it out. Let's move on to the yellow one. Yellow, positive thinking, just the light of the sun. This is what you may remember, how warm it is, or a fireplace with fire in. There is a warmth there. And positive thoughts, an optimistic view, which brings some constructive light. And actually, if you want to find the benefits, you just need to put on this hat. This can be a short-term and a long-term view as well, looking into the future, planning visions, yeah, or looking just at the following day. It reinforces the creative ideas. And if you are giving an idea, then of course you need to give some reasons why this idea might work, because it's not just about generating the ideas, but giving the reasons as well is also important. Giving maybe positive reasons. And then we have arrived at the black hat, the cautions, critical judgment, a skeptical view, which has its own place in any meeting, any conversation, any discussion, because risks might be there and somebody needs to analyze them. Danger might be there and you need to recognize it. Potential problems or negativity, why not? It is very important to have this one as well, but it may not be without giving the reasons. So it might need some reasoning as well. And another thing is you don't need to get bogged down here, because if you do so, then you will turn the idea generation into the bad direction. Some of you don't like it. Okay. It is, yeah, but it's there. It's out there. And let's take a look at the last one. What do you think it is? The green one, which might remember you growth, plants, vegetation, generating new ideas. Just like nature brings up new leaves. Plants are growing, yeah. New ideas are coming up. Creativity is there. A very optimistic view, very positive and constructive. It finds also the benefits, and the short and long-term view is very important. And it reinforces the creative ideas. You need to give here the reasons why an idea might work. I guess most of you like it, at least two of you, as far as I can see. But the thing is, this brings the positive flair into any conversation, and maybe this is the part where you can really feel, when you put it on, that new and new opportunities, new and new doors appear and open up for you, and maybe you will be able to solve any problem just by discovering these new ideas. So, three of you already like it. Wow. Okay. Now, let's make an experiment. Let's get down to real business, what we are for here actually. You are proposed the idea of working from home for the rest of the year. It is quite likely, I guess, for most of us, but can be quite unexpected in some situations, especially if you don't really like this remote setup, which you need to work in, especially if you don't really feel that it's okay for you, because it needs extra organizational efforts, extra things you need to do, or maybe you feel lost without people being around, and you don't really feel the energy without the others' contributions or the others' presence to start working. Start working on every single working day. So, you might not be happy about that. What's your first reaction? I'm really curious. I have my first reactions here. I had mine actually when I was asked to work from home, and I'm really curious what you would think if somebody told you today in the afternoon. Wow, very positive person. Why not? Okay, immediately. Acceptance. hmm That's an absolute valid, constructive approach. We may not be like this. At least if you think about the details, if you think about what other things are connected to this. Okay, and again, cooking. Maybe somebody who needs to cook too much in these times is less happy. Not with children. Okay. Oh no. And one of you is happy about that. Great, great, great. Some cautions. I'm really curious what about an acceptance. I'm sure not. Oh no. Works for me. Great, great, great. If you are asked actually very quickly about something like this, then you tend to decide based on your gut feelings, based on your emotional background, yes or no. But you haven't discovered yet, actually. So how will you decide? You can even describe if you want to do it in a certain setup, with children, without children, with just some of your children, with grandma, without grandma, with your partner, husband, wife, or without, or maybe one of you is the only one who may work from home, or maybe both of you can work from home, but only in a way that the meetings need to be organized around daily activities of the other person. But it can be like the the rooms which you would be able to work in are used for other activities as well. So maybe not there, maybe in one common room with your partner if you decide about working from home together. Maybe only for some days. Maybe maybe only for 2 days a week. Maybe every other week. Maybe from a different location. So all these things can be among your decisions. And here I would like you to be more specific about your decision. Need my own place to be separated. Okay. Schedule should be discussed, separate rooms. Working from home might be good, but in the long term, you still need collaboration, so no. Oh, so this is a decision well described, but still no. Okay. Maybe you have some thoughts in mind based on which you decided. But don't forget about you have family members. Maybe you don't live in your own apartment. Maybe you have two more roommates who need to do their jobs from the same home you are living with. Maybe you don't want to go back to your parents if you're a student. home where you won't be able to do things in a very calm, silent, relaxed way, which is needed for your job. So if you consider what needs to be done in your job, maybe you will need to consider every other aspect as well to be able to decide in a way that still is good for you in longer term. Until the end of the year, it's quite long, I guess. Need some communication with colleagues, small talks to push creativity. This is another aspect. Creativity is very often coming from others' ideas, inspiration, from just a chit chat in the coffee break. Maybe you have sometimes situations where you need to face a very difficult issue. You are not able to decide about which direction to go, what to do, whom to turn to. But in a coffee break, one colleague drops a word and immediately it comes to mind whom to ask, where to go, what to do, and which things to change in your code, for example, if you're coding. Okay, let's move on a little bit. Keep in mind what your decision was, what the basis for your decision was, what you have considered, because now we're going to put on the 6 different hats. Anyway, I will take these days. Wow, wow, wow. I'm really curious what it means. Maybe this participant will describe it in the following one, a little bit more detailed. Okay, let's put on then the 6 thinking hats. I'm going to start with mine. Okay. Yeah, why don't we try what the 6 hats offer to make a decision? Let's put on them. Okay, the blue hat thinking we're going to start with. This is what I'm doing now, okay? This is actually leading a thinking process. This is what you have deep inside. The questions you ask when you put on the blue hat is, what is our agenda? What is our next step? How can we summarize the discussion so far? And what is our decision? So as far as I can see this discussion, we have just started with the first ideas, how to decide about this quite difficult life issue, whether to work from home, whether to accept this or bring in some new ideas. At the moment, as far as I could see, we are at more or less you are positive about that, but somebody was there who said no. And I think they had their reasons. Maybe it was socializing, so different reasons. So far we are here. You've had your decisions, your own decisions, but maybe you will consider some other things as well. So this was my part. Let's move on to another hat. To the white hat thinking. You just put on your white hat and ask your questions. What information is available about this issue? Working from home until the end of the year. What information do we need? And maybe this way you can already explore what it covers working from home until the end of the year. And how are we going to get the missing information? These are the 3 questions which you need to bear in mind when you think about the white hat thinking, white hat way of thinking. Please type in what your answers are to these questions. Just to help you, I've put into Menti the same questions so you can see while you are typing it, while you are typing your answers. I'm really curious what you think. This is about, actually, this is about collecting data. A very important thing. You know, Being absolutely neutral, you know, having the white paper for yourselves, data and information, neutral way. You can even think about the relevance of some things. If you analyze this issue based on what's available, what else you need. Asking questions actively. This is maybe what we need to do now. Actively might mean many different things. It can mean asking more persons who would be able to give you the answers. It might think that you ask many questions. This is what you need to do. Maybe the information you've got so far is based on your experience, which you went through since mid-March when things started to change. And maybe your previous experience you have seen, you went through, might help you as well. Yes, asking questions actively. This is absolutely one of the things we need to do. You can even explain, give specific answers to what exactly you would ask, because it is not only about asking questions, but what would I need to know to be able to decide about? We don't have certainty about how long the situation will last. Absolutely agree. We need information on duration, costs, who is supporting, who is not. The facts about productivity in working from home, questions, surveys, analyzing data. Okay. And this is something, if you bear in mind, for example, that we are not certain about how long the situation will last. Maybe this working from home until the end of the year doesn't mean until the end of this year, maybe until the end of next year. We don't know. Maybe also the costs might be interesting for some of you, especially if you consider working from home has different aspects from your perspectives, different costs of living, of paying the bills, and of course, some kind of discomfort as well. Okay. And support. Who is supporting? Maybe these supporting factors can be people from your family. It can be the company which you work for. Or maybe some facts are needed about productivity. So comparing your own and the team's productivity to what you had before. And the current project and communication ways is a serious issue. Who supports? Ask the team leader. Ask the team leader all the questions you would like to know what actually you need to be able to decide about this. Okay, yeah, thank you. Let's move on to another way of thinking, the red hat thinking. And you may remember it's going to be extremely fast. What are my feelings right now about this issue, working from home till the end of the year? What does my intuition tell me? What is my gut reaction? Please be quickly here. Put it in. Gut feelings. Whatever comes to mind immediately. This is ventilation time. I won't let you do it for long. You your heart needs rest as well. And we don't want to get too emotional about this. And maybe if you try to describe your feelings, it will help you as well to realize you have some feelings and you can start dealing with them. Fatigue. I absolutely agree. Sometimes I feel the same. Yeah. Maybe that was a word which touched me as well. Yeah. Fatigue is typically, just for those ones who don't know this word, uh, feeling like 100 years old, almost dying, no way out of this situation, kind of deep depression as well, but based on you lack of energy, you cannot do anything. You don't feel like doing anything at all. Fear of uncertain situation, absolutely understandable. It could be an opportunity, what we don't know. We don't know yet. Maybe it is an opportunity. You never know. But you need to experience this first, you need to explore this first. And it's very, very unsafe, uncertain. You never know what's going to happen next day, next week, next month. Who knows? No way, I like going out and meeting people. Okay, that's an absolutely acceptable, yeah, gut feeling. Okay, let's move on then, because we still have 3 more hats and some of them might be explored more deeply. Let's go to the bright side. Sunshine happiness, yellow hat thinking about the benefits. What are the benefits of working from home until the end of the year? So in longer term at least. What are the positive things about that? And what are the values? Is there a concept in this idea that looks attractive? Can this be made to work? What about your opinions? I'm really curious. If you put on the yellow hat, so the sunny kind of approach, how you will feel, how you will be able to collect some ideas related to this. It is sometimes very difficult, especially maybe for the person who felt fatigue. But still, if you imagine the sunshine, some warmth, some positive things, because there cannot be exclusively negative things about working from home remotely. Yeah, there is no traffic jam. You need to, stay in your car. Okay. No commuting. You can sleep more. Can be together with my partner. Okay. Less commute, more time for myself. Less closed office space. Which might be actually a very good, very positive thing for some of you. Maybe those ones who are constantly ill, have some difficulties because of air conditioning at the office. Yeah, why not? More time for children, more time for works, more opportunity for new projects. Wow, wow, wow. Maybe your pet project can be started up. Why not? Maybe you have some hobbies you have always wanted to start up with, but you have never had the time for. And if it doesn't require social closeness or socializing kind of, but can be done within this socially distancing environment, why not? Maybe what a benefit could be is more time for children. A takeaway for children, for you, for the whole family, for the whole atmosphere where you can get plenty of energies from for your work, for your hobbies, against your fatigue. Now, I guess this yellow hat has beautiful opportunities for you. Let's move on to the black hat, what it can offer. It's going to be a kind of opposite, so I just want to warn you. Here you need to answer the questions. What could be the possible problems and difficulties? What are the risks? What are the downsides? So all the negative things with the black hat. Try to think about now. What about the difficulties? What about the risks related to working from home? I don't know how long, but at least till the end of the year. And this unsure situation. So try to consider. And I'm really curious what aspects will be mentioned here, which aspects of life in general, because some might just think of work-related things, but it can mean mental health as well, health in general, family-related things, socially active people can go mad. Delay. Delay of what? I was just wondering. Maybe delaying something that can be done only in person, only face to face. Maybe you delay something that you've always wanted to do, but it is not possible in this setup. Maybe some negative effects of being alone for a long time. Tech issues at home. Oh, Jesus. I could tell you stories about that. Problems with productivity and motivation in team. Yeah, really. I can see more and more people talk about motivation, loss of motivation actually, not too much of motivation. So that might be an issue. Gaining weight, yeah, because of lack of healthy food. You eat what you can get. Maybe all the canned food is available at home. And surely plenty of things need to be organized very well if you want to eat healthy food. You need to pay more for electricity and water, and other people always come to you. Yeah, it is maybe because of the organizational background. hmm You cannot go to other people. Okay. Which might be maybe an expectation from your side if you want to socialize. But of course, if it is not doable at the moment, what can you do? It is difficult to explain children that mother is busy right now. Oh, I guess this is my husband. It provides some tension for projects. You don't know colleague mood. Again, it provides tension in the team. Okay, maybe this is somebody else. But to be honest, this is what I experience as well. Explaining children why I'm not available, although I'm here. So this is the black hat thinking. Okay, yeah, let's move on to a more positive thing. Yeah, the green pot has arrived, green hat thinking. Let's ask yourselves, are there other ways to do this? What else could we do here in this situation? What are the possibilities? And what will overcome our difficulties? Don't forget about overcoming difficulties is also a very positive thing. And I would like you to think about, oh, sorry. No, I will wait until you think for yourselves. I'm really sorry. Maybe one of the slides have disappeared. Okay. Just think about what other possibilities there are. Think about for yourselves. Because we are very close to come up with a decision. Just send me a thumbs up if you are done with thinking of other possibilities. One person is done. Okay. What you might think of is actually absolutely new ways, which you wouldn't have thought of previously. Maybe some ideas that others have had. You talked about the situation too. Maybe some examples you've heard about. Maybe on the internet you've read about a family who could organize their lives like this. Or maybe some people who are more successful in this remote environment, remote setup than they were previously. In the olden times, before mid March, when everybody was working in just a normal way. Okay, three of you are done. And I guess this is more or less the active participants in this conversation. So now I would like you to summarize what your thoughts were considering the 6 different hats. So the first one, the blue one, the organizational one, which has the processes in mind. The white one, with all the facts and information that are available, what you will need to know, what else you will need to know, who you will need to ask to come up with a solution. And then the red one, your gut feelings. The yellow one, sunshine, happiness, the positive thoughts about this, whether there is anything good about the situation. And then the black hat, your concerns. And the last one, your new ideas you have come up with. So, what about your decision now? You can type it in. Maybe it's going to be a little bit different from the way you decided. Maybe it's going to be approximately the same. And maybe you can have some additional ideas here. Please try to be specific. You can even type in your decision that is based on some conditions. So, if I am given the answer by my team lead that I will receive a 20% pay rise if I stay at home for the following 1.5 years, then I will do so and I will organize my children in a way that they don't need to be at home, but still they don't bring home any viruses. So why not? A condition can be included because now you discovered several aspects of this situation, which we are all in at the very moment. So whatever you have written, actually, I myself experienced. And it's a strange thing because in these changing times, all of us have gone through those many emotions, many experiences, kind of exploring phase where we received so much of input that it was, very difficult to live with and bear with. Still, yes, but we need guidelines towards team, family, etc. Salary raise wouldn't hurt. Maybe in these difficult times, it's even if you can keep your jobs is okay. And yeah, it is good to keep in mind that not losing your job is actually winning, so to say, in these times. Maybe one more answer would be very nice, just to have at least one different one. And I actually want to leave it with you. So if you don't want to express it right now, just write it down for yourselves. That's absolutely all right as well. Okay, I will organize my work from home in best way. In any case, my child will study English with me. Wow. Or get a lot of communication in the kindergarten. Oh, more advantages than disadvantages to do home office. That's actually good news. So somebody has still the yellow hat on, maybe. Don't forget about to get it off when you go home. I just wanted to congratulate for you. You went through the 6 hat process and you were able to decide in a more varied, more subtle way what you needed to decide about. I wish you good luck in your further career, working remotely, working from home, maybe for the rest of the year. And I just wanted to say thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, please get back to me. It's available on znight's homepage. I'm happy to answer them and make you get to know some details about the 6 hats thinking. Thank you very much.